eat an apple, who knows? But we see here Gerry Thompson on the left, blue, white, red flash, of course. Top 8 Pro Tour Montreal with that. I mean, his deck list is basically the exact same from that. Some minor cosmetic changes here and there. You see a main deck like Trickery, but you're still going to find him with 4 main deck Boros Reckoners and a Harvest Pyre. And you have Joe Bass Joe Bass on the right playing Esper Control.
Gerry's going to Dennis the Menace lookalike contest right after this match, so hopefully he'll be able to finish it in time.
So we got to see these players begin here. Joe, a player from the South, New Orleans player, as you're going to see him cast an Augur Bolas. Gerry, obviously well known here, and this is a control mirror. You're going to see Joe reveal Feeling of Dread off of Augur Bolas.
The one Feeling of Dread. Not ideal in this matchup, but again, it's better than nothing.
You see Gerry targeting Joe with the Thought Scour.
Yeah, very interesting play there.
And that's going to put a Glacial Fortress and a Forbidden Alchemy there. So Joe does get a little bit of help off of that Thought Scour. So he's going to come in for 1. He's going to play in the Fire Giant Yard and pass the turn back. So what's going to be interesting here, Osip, is this is your control mirror. People think that Esper is favoring this mirror. It's a more traditional control deck where your blue and red flash deck is a more I guess you could say a more aggro control deck. It kind of plays both roles.
It's one of those decks that can change roles.
Yeah,
and that's always something fun. Esper can't really do that. It's a control deck. It's always going to be a control deck. The good thing about Flash is it can change the roles. Sometimes it can play the control matchup. Sometimes it can play the aggressor. It really just depends on the matchup. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people like that deck.
You're going to see Gerry put 2 lands to the bottom. One of them that is notable is a Sacred Foundry, a red source for him, but he does take a Dissipate off of that. And we'll see if Gerry does have a land to play this turn. Looks like he's reaching.
Yeah, it looks like there's a Glacial Fortress there. And I think the main reason he didn't want to Thought Scour himself early on is because he didn't really have a red source, and he didn't want to risk hitting a red source with the Thought Scour.
Sure.
So he just wants to cantrip there. Sometimes, especially when you're a little land light or color screwed, you kind of want to cantrip, but you don't want to mill lands.
Yep.
So smart play there by Gerry.
We see Electrickery, the draw step here for Gerry, kind of a nod towards what Junk Reanimator is doing with those Mad Accelerants and Lingering Souls, also Naya Blitz. So we're going to see a Drown Yard activation here from Joe, and we're going to see if he's going to target himself or Gerry. Or it looks like, I think,
no, it looks like a Restoration
Angel. Okay.
And this card's huge in this matchup.
And we're going to see Searing Spear take care of that Augur of Bolas. So Gerry does draw a red source finally, as Joe's going to come across for 3 in the air. Going to put Gerry down to 13. And we'll see if he does have a land drop to hit, because traditionally in the control mirrors, the first person to miss on that land drop, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And again, Gerry Thought Scour is Joe. Gerry does not have a 6 land, but he does have a Restoration Angel of his own, as well as a Dissipate.
And you also see 2 Sphinx's Revelations. You're going to see Augur of Bolas come across here. He also has 2 Sphinx Revelations in his hand. There might be some merit to just main phasing one of these to try to land drop, but I mean, that's super risky. Just tapping out, putting the shields down.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to do that. Risking dealing with a Planeswalker. I think he kind of wants to just get a Restoration Angel play. Restoration Angel, again, with the Electrickery too, it could even block and kill Joe's Restoration Angel if he tries to attack again. So interesting to see what happens here.
And now you're going to see Gerry, after Joe does play Snapcaster Mage on Forbidden Alchemy on Gerry's end step, Gerry is going to get in a Restoration Angel. He's going to blink Augur Bolas. That's going to find a Dissipate. So he does have 2 Dissipates in his hand right now. And taking a look at Gerry's deck list, he has 3 Dissipates overall in the starting 60. Joe does play a Hallowed Fountain untapped. That's going to bring him down to 17, and he's going to see a main phase Sphinx Revelation. Now, what's kind of interesting here in the control mirrors, Osip, is that with all these cards that have flash on them, people start trying to get them in on the main phase and stuff like that. And so then the game actually becomes like kind of a main phase battle about main phasing Sphinx Revelation to resolve on each side, main phasing Restoration Angels, and then players are tapping out on their own turn instead of just leaving their shields up.
Yeah, and it's much easier for Joe to tap out because Gerry has to contend with Planeswalkers, whereas there's nothing really on Gerry's side that he's that afraid of. Maybe an Aurelia, but again, Joe does have Supreme Verdict, so if it's just creatures that he has to contend with, he always has a catch-all for that. Whereas Gerry doesn't have a great answer to a Planeswalker other than a Restoration Angel, which Joe has a blocker for.
And so now you see Gerry get in with the Restoration Angel. Joe predictably blocks with his, and then Gerry does cast the Overload on Electrickery, clearing out the Snapcaster Mage, clearing out the Restoration Angel. So you see some of the power of that rather fair instant.
Yeah, and it's odd that Joe decided to play the Augur Bolas first as opposed to just casting a Supreme Verdict, because clearly he's going to have to eventually deal with this Restoration Angel, especially if he has a Planeswalker in his hand. I don't really know if you want to just get that Augur out there just yet. But again, I mean, he's going to have to eventually deal with the... I like the fact, especially if you have a Devourer Flesh, I like being able to just cast a Supreme Verdict and playing a land untapped for a Dissipate, which we know he has. He also has a Syncopate in his hand too. You need to deal with that Restoration Angel.
So Gerry does play another Thought Scour, targets Joe yet again, does draw a card. You see Steam Vents in his hand. You see a mitt full of cards there. Again, we do know there are 2 Dissipates over there. Gerry does have a Boros Reckoner. He's just going to play Steam Vents tapped and pass the turn back. And now you're going to see a Restoration Angel here. Joe's going to attempt to blink that Augur of Bolas. So that's going to be good to go.
Gerry does have a Dissipate, but he chooses not to use it here.
And so now you're going to see Joe find a Supreme Verdict. So we'll see if he's going to pull the trigger on that here and restabilize the board. Or does he think that I'm at 17, that's good enough for me? I mean, I've got Restoration Angel to block your Restoration Angel, my Augur to block your Augur, no need to move.
I'm surprised Joe didn't attack with the Restoration Angel. With Gerry at 13 and Joe having a feeling of dread, he could theoretically just attack Gerry for thinking about actually attacking him for the win here, as opposed to trying to mill him.
Sure.
Know?
It is interesting to see maybe this Esper deck can change gears. It's not something that you see. You don't really typically see Esper kill someone via combat damage, but this situation might lend itself, especially as you said, he does have those feeling of dread, in his hand.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I would consider it, because Gerry is relatively low. He's at 13. You're not going to lose the race likely because you have you cast Sphinx of Revelation. But again, I think Joe's just trying to play a controlling route here. He's just going to try to mill him out.
And you see Joe, playing Think Twice, casting it again. Gerry just discards for his turn, so discards a Pillar of Flame and passes the turn back. Joe is going to play a Hollow Fountain, and now we're going to see the first Sphinx's Revelation here from Gerry, and you're going to see a Syncopate here for Joe from 1, and Syncopate is pretty huge there.
Yeah, and again, the fact that Gerry didn't attack there, he has double Pillar of Flame. He could have tried to just bait a block from Joe and then Pillar of Flame the Restoration Angel, but you can tell that Gerry, I think, is a little concerned with his life total being at 13, because he does know the feeling of dread is there. It was revealed early. So I think Gerry might be concerned about attack here. Again, Joe kind of, I think, showed his hand a little bit by not attacking the turn before, so I don't think Gerry needs to be that afraid of it, but again, certainly something that Gerry might want to consider.
So we do see a Nephalia Johnyard activation for Joe on Gerry's end step here. Turns over 3 cards. He's going to cycle Azorius Charm, shields it down, passes the turn back.
And again, Gerry could have tried to cast a Sphinx of Revelation for 3 there, but again, I think he's just afraid of those Planeswalkers.
And, one of the things you have to keep in mind here, too, Osip, is that Gerry obviously has been playing blue, white, red for a very, very long time. Yeah. We all know that. And you see him not attacking. You see him running Sphinx's Revelations. It almost feels like he's running them into counterspells on purpose. He's discarding and going, all right, Revelate for X, see if this resolves, see if it doesn't resolve. One thing to remember about this blue-red flash tag, he does have the Harvest Power Boros Reckoner combo. You see Joe beginning to mill him. You see Gerry holding that Boros Reckoner, not casting it, not exposing it to Supreme Verdict, as he does draw a Sulphur Falls for the turn. And if he does have a Snapcaster Mage in his hand, Joe will eventually turn over the Harvest Pyre. He'll be able to Snapcaster it, bring that Harvest Pyre back, and fireball him out. So even though Joe's at 17, Gerry's not moving. Gerry seems like he's kind of protecting his life total, maybe trying to bait Joe a little bit here.
And I kind of like this line simply because he doesn't have many ways to kill a Boros Reckoner. But again, it looks like Gerry just went for the Sphinxes here. So the fact that he doesn't main phase, I think he's just, I'm not sure what his line is. I think he's just like, I'm going to try to draw cards here. Although it's a tough position to be in right now because technically Joe can just play a Planeswalker now. And I think he has enough ways to protect it. If he does have a Jace, I'm not sure if he has a Jace in his hand or not though. Looks like he might not have the Jace. Decides to cast Supreme Verdict.
Yeah, you're going to see him clear the board up now. So he's decided to pull the trigger on this, as Gerry did resolve a Sphinx of Revelation 4/4 on his own turn, discarded a Pillar of Flame and Azorius Charm. Joe does cast the Verdict and does just pass the turn back, threatening Nephalia Johnyard activations here. You can tell, I think we can both agree that Gerry's playing a little bit strange. Not attacking, not being very aggressive. As you said, could have Pillar Flamed after Restoration Angel. So something is going on over here. Trying to figure out what it is difficult for us here in the booth. Might be difficult for you guys at home. And you can imagine with our difficulty, you have to wonder what's going through Joe's mind as well. What's Gerry up to? Because a player of Gerry's skill level, he's certainly up to something.
I mean, Harvest Pyre, Boros Reckoner is going to be tough for Joe to beat. There's not much he can do. He has Devour Flesh, which is a way to stop it. And again, but beyond that, you don't really have many ways. Like Azorius Charm really doesn't matter there. Ultimate Price isn't going to work against the Boros Reckoner. So the thing is, he doesn't have many ways to stop it. He used a lot of his counterspells already. So that line of play is I think a reasonable one, but I still think Gerry might have been better off attacking that one turn and just seeing what Joe does. Joe likely blocks there, and then you can kill with the Restoration Angel. Again, Joe does have multiple Supreme Verdicts. Gerry knows this probably, so maybe he was just like, there's probably no way I'm going to be able to win with my creatures, so I have to try to win with the Harvest Fire combo.
And so now we do see 3 Drowned Catacombs turned over for Jace's -2 ability. Gerry gives him 2, obviously he's going to end up getting 2. We'll see a Thought Scour here. He's going to target Joe, turns over 2 lands, Gerry gets a Dissipate. Now we're going to see an Azorius Charm, so Gerry's going to do a little bit of velocity here. Clifftop Retreat goes to his hand. And it feels like to me he's sculpting. He's looking to get that combo in play and then just kind of do it all in one turn and maybe protect it with a Dissipate.
Okay, so he has what he needs. He has the Snapcaster Mage. He has double Dissipate. So if all he needs to do is hit a Harvest Pyre, unless he already has, I'm not sure if one was already revealed off the Drown Yard, but again,
you see him counting the library.
The great situation for Gerry is if Joe gets a little greedy and just taps out every turn to cast the Drown Yard. It looks like Gerry's going to play one of the Reckoners.
Yeah, it looks like he's happy to play a Reckoner right now.
Which will get eaten by a Devour Flesh.
You're going to see a Dissipate here. Okay. Now, the funny thing here is, I think everyone's pretty familiar with Gerry's list and what he has done with this deck and the Harvest Pyre combo. As you see, he's going to Dissipate back here. It makes you wonder if Joe kind of knows what Gerry's up to.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of like Joe needs to. Again, we don't know whether or not there's a Harvest Pyre in the graveyard, so it's tough to see. But again, he has Devour Flesh, so he decides to cast a Supreme Verdict, which again maximizes mana.
Yep.
And it's going to be tough for Gerry to go off through a Devour Flesh.
Yeah.
He really needs an Augur Bolus.
You see Gerry take a look as he does draw Sulfur Falls. You see him take a look at Joe's graveyard, maybe looking for a counterspell, seeing how many counterspells are in the graveyard. These Esper decks, they run a certain number of them. Yeah. Obviously, you can put them on a certain number of Dissipates, Syncopates, what have you. They can't play a ton of counter magic. Just how the format is, as you see, he's going to turn over 3 cards.
There it is.
There's your Harvest Pyre.
So what Gerry probably needs to do here, he has to cast a Snapcaster first, targeting the Harvest Pyre.
Yep.
Then cast the Boros Reckoner to play around Devour Flesh.
Yep.
And again, we know he has at least 1 Dissipate in his hand. So it's going to take 6, 7, it's going to take 10 total mana, which Gerry has. So let's see if Gerry tries to pull the trigger this turn.
Let's see if he has to pull the trigger this turn. He's going to count his library because you see he's counting for Drown Yard.
Yeah.
To see exactly, okay, what turn do I have to do it? Is it this turn? And now you're going to see him start off with a Boros Reckoner.
So that's... Well, let's see. I think he has to lead with the Snapcaster first, because if he casts Snapcaster, he can respond to the Snapcaster with a Devour Flesh, with the Devour Flesh. So let's see if Joe plays this correctly.
So now you see Joe tapping some mana here. You see 8 mana being tapped. You see 1 Drown Yard activation. You're going to see a Snapcaster.
So here we go. Is Joe going to play correctly and cast those?
I think we see 2 Devour Fleshes in his hand. So here's a Devour Flesh in response to that. Here's a Dissipate from Gerry.
And we have a second Devour Flesh.
Second Devour Flesh.
So now, even if Gerry can dissipate this, it doesn't matter. He won't have enough mana.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you saw that he was trying to build to that, and it almost seems like it took Joe a second, and then he realized what he was trying to get to.
Yeah.
And then Gerry's plan of trying to execute that plan did not work, because we saw where Gerry could have exposed Boros Reckoners many turns earlier.
But the thing is, though, if Gerry casts Snapcaster first, targeting the Harvest Pyre,
sure,
Joe really doesn't have a line there. He can't do anything. So then Gerry plays the Boros Reckoner. If Joe casts Devour Flesh in response to the Reckoner, that's not going to do anything. He has a Snapcaster in place that he can sack.
Sure.
So Joe's only line there is really cast Devour Flesh. Gerry sacks the Snapcaster Mage. Then Joe casts a second Devour Flesh, and then Gerry dissipates that, and he still has enough mana to cast a Harvest Pyre.
Sure.
So that's why Gerry really needs to, if he knows my only line here is Harvest Pyre, he has to cast Snapcaster first, targeting my Harvest Pyre, then play the Reckoner.
Okay.
You can't try to do it in response to an activation, because you lose to double Devour Flesh. Now again, Joe has to have double Devour Flesh, but you also lose to Devour Flesh counterspell.
Yeah,
that's true. So I think the safer play there, or the play around Devour Flesh, is to cast the Snapcaster first.
Okay.
In your main phase, and then cast the Reckoner. It's not as tricky. You can't do it in response to stuff, but at least you play around Devour Flesh, which is probably the card that you're most afraid of.
Yeah. As Devour Flesh has become the industry standard now in Esper control decks. Take a look at the sideboards here as Gerry is down a game. Joe is up 1. You see Gerry's sideboard of 3 clones, 3 copies of Rest in Peace, a Witchbane Orb, 2 Dispels, 2 Negates, 2 Jace Memory Adept, and Electrickery, and a Supreme Verdict. Witchbane Orb, a card that I think is almost certainly going to come in here, gives himself hexproof, cannot be targeted via the Nefarious Drown Yard unless he actually wants to be targeted via Nefarious Drown Yard. As we saw that game, he actually wanted that to happen. We see 2 Dispels, obviously to win these Sphinx's Revelation fights, as these Negates do as well. And then the card that we do see often in these matchups from Blue White Red is 2 Jace Memory Adept to be able to mill that player out. So he definitely does have some control aspects. Plenty of cards to sideboard out here with these Pillar of Flames, these Sphinx's Revelation, these Searing Spears. You know, he's got some things that he can definitely move out of his deck.
Yeah, and Joe actually has some good cards to the sideboard. He's got an Obsidian Ghost Council, which is very good against blue, red, white. They don't have many ways to deal with an Obsidian instant speed. You have Azorius Charm, but again, as long as they don't attack with the Obsidian and they just keep draining you each turn, it's a 4-point life swing and they could easily win that way. 2 copies of Evil Twin, which are primarily against Reanimator decks. 2 copies of Tragic Slip, which I'm not sure you want to bring those in this matchup, mostly against beatdown decks. It is a way to deal with Boros Reckoners, technically, possibly, but again, not really a card you want in this matchup. Does have 2 copies of Blind Obedience. Maybe if he's afraid of Thundermaw Hellkite, he might bring those in. They aren't that bad at pinging life and dealing with certain cards, but again, Tragic Slip, Blind Obedience are more for control matchups. Rest in Peace, I can see Rest in Peace maybe coming in. It shuts off the Snapcaster Mage, turns off that Harvest Pyre part of the combo, which is one of the main ways that Gerry kind of wins. Gerry has inevitability with that Harvest Pyre.
Tries to set it up at least.
Yeah, and Rest in Peace kind of turns that off. Witchbane Orb, that's more really for the Esper Mirror and maybe against Jund. Not sure you want to bring that card in this matchup. 1 copy of Negate and Dispel. Obviously, those cards are probably going to come in, along with a copy of Jace Memory Adept. At the very least, you'll deal with opposing Jaces. It's a way to deal with opposing Jaces. And he has 2 copies of Angel Serenity, which I wouldn't be that surprised if he brought them in, because sometimes that card's really good against Flash because they'll use their counter spells like Dissipate, and then they have hands of just Negate, Dispel, and they can't really deal with an Angel Serenity.
Not only that, it's something that he probably can't get off the board either once it does resolve, because predictably Gerry is going to sideboard his removal. He's going to, of course, Pillar of Flame and Serious Prayer aren't going to deal with it anyway, but he does have 2 Supreme Verdicts, and I would expect those to go out, as we do see both players are going to keep their hands underway here with Hallowed Fountain, Glacial Fortress, and Augur Bolas here for Gerry.
And pretty good start for Gerry. He's got to turn to Augur Bolas with a Think Twice, which Think Twice is great in this matchup because you just want to keep making your land drops.
Yeah. You're going to see Joe with an Augur Bolas of his own. Let's see what he's able to find here. He's going to put 3 on the bottom, so not as fortunate. As you do see, Gerry draws a Dispel for the turn. He's going to play a Boros Reckoner, and he's going to get the beatdowns going right away.
And this is a great start for Gerry because he's able to apply pressure to Joe, and Joe trying to bait Joe into casting a turn for a Supreme Verdict, which Gerry can hopefully follow up with the Jace Memory Deck, which he has in his hand. He doesn't have the 5th mana yet, but again, he has to think twice to help try to get there.
And you do see Joe immediately block there with the Augur Bolas. Feels like maybe a Supreme Verdict is on the way here.
He definitely has one, so let's see.
And now he does, and let's see if Gerry's able to hit that 5th land, as you're going to see him. Happy Man, he's going to start with the Thought Scour. We'll see who he targets. Targets Joe, turns over a Hallowed Fountain and a Forbidden Alchemy. Gerry does draw a Negate.
So still has access to Think Twice. Let's see if he gets there.
Think Twice. There's a Boros Reckoner.
Again, not a bad draw. It's another way to pressure.
And Gerry draws, and there's Azorius Charm,
wow.
so not the 5th land.
Not the 5th land, but again, he's got a lot of permission. He's got a Snapcaster, and he still has that Jace. So, unlike in the first game, Joe's not going to be able to be as aggressive with the Sphinx of Revelation and just tap it on the main phase because he has to contend with a Jace.
Yep.
So Joe probably has to be a little more conservative this game than he was in the first game. But again, at least Gerry does have a Reckoner. He has something that he can attack Joe with, try to force him to tap out again, and here's a Jace of his own, which is this is really rough now because he can uptick it, draw a card. Gerry can attack it, but he doesn't really have a good way to get it off the board just yet.
And now Gerry, if he does draw a 5th land, he probably has to. He draws a Harvest Pyre. If he does draw the 5th land, he probably has to play his own Jace just to Legend Rule Joe's, because Jace just threatens to take over the game immediately.
And I think he's going to just Harvest Pyre. I would probably
just have to Pyre for 2.
You might just Pyre for 2 to get off the board, because I think Gerry he doesn't want to. He really wants his Jace. I don't think it's worth. Oh well, so it looks like he's just going to pass. I'm not sure whether or not Gerry's going to actually Yeah, I'm surprised that Gerry didn't just try to deal with the Jace that turn. I think maybe he just wants to try to make his land drops. He still has a negate. He has the Dispel, Azorius Charm. But again, Joe does have a Devour Flesh, so it kind of puts a wrinkle into Gerry's plan of just trying to attack. Devour Flesh is probably going to get dispelled here.
Gonna fight over
and we have a Syncopate, so it's definitely going to get fought. And now Gerry loses his only way to attack the Jace Memory Depth, which is kind of huge now.
So now we're going to see the thing twice card is drawn. It is a Thought Scour for
no
Gerry.
No fifth land yet.
Gerry looking for a fifth land, draws a
And
Clifftop
there it is.
Retreat. Okay. So now the question is does Joe have another counterspell? Does he have another Syncopate? Does he have another negate in his hand? You know, what does he have? And does Gerry have to pull the trigger on Jace right now? Because it is threatening to take the game over, and he's going to cast this, and Joe has another Syncopate for one.
And you see, this is where it's just getting too far away from Gerry, and why I thought Gerry just needed to cast Harvest Pyre and deal with the Jace right then. You can't afford to let Joe draw another card, and even a Supreme Verdict would have been able to deal with the Reckoner. You're not guaranteed that the Reckoner is going to be able to attack again. It's just not likely to happen. So you need to make sure you deal with that Jace. And if anyone knows how important Jace is in this matchup, it's Gerry. So I'm surprised he didn't pull the trigger there.
So now you do see a Thought Scour. It does target Joe. Turns over Restoration Angel and Sphinx Revelation. Gerry does draw a card, does not find a sixth land. You see a hand of Azorius Charms, you see a Dispel, you see a lot of reactive elements in his hand, a little bit of cantripping, but none of those reactive elements are going to get the job done on this Jace. And this is the kind of scary part, as he does cycle an Azorius Charm, draws a Steam Vents for the turn, is, you know, you're very happy to draw those reactive elements. That's why they're in your sideboard, is to draw them and win those fights over Revelations. But, you know, the goal in this matchup, one of the many goals, of course, is to slide a Jace Memory Adept through. Funny to say to slide a 5-mana Planeswalker through, but if you get that thing on the board and able to establish it for a turn or two, there's almost no coming back from it.
No, and Joe's been able to draw a couple of cards off it already. He's gaining card advantage, and now he can start milling for 10. And with a Drown Yard in play already, with 2 Drown Yards in play, it's going to be tough for Gerry to put enough pressure on board in order to kill Joe before he just mills him out.
Yeah, and you see Joe plays out Watergrave on tap. Now he can activate both Drown Yards. You see the way that he's situated his land so that he can do that. Gerry has to cycle the Azorius Charm to draw a card. He draws a Dissipate, another reactive element. And again, every card that he cycles, every draw step that he takes is that much closer to getting milled out of his deck, but he has to draw cards to deal with this answer. So he's in this very difficult situation.
Yeah, and again, maybe Gerry's thinking, because I drew the Harvest Pyre, maybe because I have it, maybe I'm okay with this line, because if I draw a Reckoner, I can maybe kill him on the spot. But again,
you see him just concede right away.
Yeah, there's nothing Gerry can do. Jace is just too difficult to beat, especially